savage, and unforgiving world. In the Upton Sinclair's novel, The Jungle.
The Jungle is a story about a Lithuanian family. This family moves to Chicago and finds work in the meatpacking industry in Packingtown. Yugis is the protagonist of this novel, who is going to marry Ona, a young and beautiful girl. But before marrying her, he needed a job. Therefore, he tries his luck in the meatpacking plants, where thousands of animals are slaughtered, butchered, and packaged for consumers all across the world. As Yugis is physically strong, he gets hired very quickly. Manager Ona's cousin also finds a job as a can painter. And the rest of the family desperately searches for work to escape their poverty. Later on, they decide to buy a house, and they spend all their money for it. Yugis' father finds difficulty in getting a job. But somehow, he finds a job as he gets ready to work with low wages. Yugis comes to America to live an American dream. But he soon realizes that it's quite difficult to survive there for an immigrant. Finally, Yugis and Ona get married, but all the wedding expenditure puts the family into further debt. Along with that, they come to know from a neighbor that they need to pay interest on the house every month. That makes Ona and Stanislavus, a young boy, to also find work for that. Due to the horrible work conditions, Yugis' father dies. When winter comes, it becomes more difficult for the people to survive there, as many people die due to terrible work conditions. Meanwhile, Marija finds her true love in Timosius, who is a violinist, and they both decide to marry. But unfortunately, she loses her job as her factory shuts down. Now it becomes more difficult for Yugis to provide all the needs of the family. Later on, Yugis is offered to become a citizen of the United States for voting a particular candidate. This creates Yugis' interest in the politics. And he also decides to learn English. When Yugis observes the political atmosphere there, he becomes aware of the corrupt political system in Chicago. And he also finds out that a man named Mike Scully is very powerful man there.
Marija gets her job back, but due to some reason, she loses it again. And Ona gives birth to a baby boy, who is named as Antoangas. Meanwhile, Yugis gets very busy due to his work. But one day, while working, he sprains his ankle, and the injury was very serious. That is the reason why he was unable to work, and as he becomes jobless, the economic condition of the family becomes worse. He had to take several months of rest due to his serious injury. And when he recovers, he again begins his search for the job. Finally, he finds a job in the dreaded fertilizer factory. Due to the bad economic conditions, Ona's stepmother is also forced to work in the sausage factory. Yugis works in worst working environment. As he had to work in with such working conditions, he starts drinking. Ona gets pregnant for the second time. But this pregnancy doesn't bring happiness to their family, as it was very difficult for them to raise a child with their poor economic condition. Meanwhile, Yugis comes to know that Ona has been raped by her boss. Yugis thrashes the boss. Blood and skin drips from his teeth. Yugis is then taken to the jail. When Yugis is taken to the court for the trial, Ona's boss denies his involvement with Ona in the court, and therefore, Yugis is sentenced to jail for 30 days. And along with that, his bond is set at $300. Stanislavus, Ona's stepbrother, visits Yugis in jail and tells him all the bad conditions they are going through. Yugis couldn't help but to give them all the remaining money he had, as his family needed it desperately.
Yugis returns home after being released from the jail. He walks 20 miles to his home in Packingtown. When he reaches home, he finds out that the house has been sold to someone else. He visits grandmother Myaskina, who informs him that his family had to sell the house, as they could not pay the rent. The agent threw them and sold the house to another family. The grandmother gives him the address of the boarding house where they stayed when they first arrived in Chicago. When Yugis reaches there, he finds out that Ona is in premature labor, and she is having her delivery at the boarding house, as they couldn't afford a doctor. So, Yugis borrows some money from others to bring a midwife. But the midwife needed more money, and after so much of bargaining, she arrives with him to the boarding house. And when they arrive there, Yugis is sent out until Ona delivers the baby. Yugis goes out and spends his night in a saloon. He returns the boarding house at 4 o'clock in the morning. He finds midwife all covered in blood. She tells him that the baby died, and Ona is taking her last breath. Finally, Ona also dies.
Yugis is devastated by the death of his wife and his newborn baby. So he goes to the bar and begins drinking. When he gets sober, Ona's stepmother asks him to find a job for the sake of his elder son. But unfortunately, Yugis couldn't find work in Packingtown, as he was blacklisted by all the bosses. But after a great struggle, he finds a job in a machine factory. But unfortunately, several days later, Yugis's department closes until further notice. Again, Yugis begins his search for the job. Finally, Yugis gets a job in a steel factory. But he had to stay away from his family, as he couldn't afford to waste his money on traveling. So he travels home only on weekends.
One day, when Yugis comes home, he discovers that an accident has occurred with his son Ontwangas, and he has drowned in the mire of mud in the streets. Yugis looks at his dead son and leaves the house without saying a word. He feels great grief by losing his son. He goes to the countryside and starts living a life of a tramp, wandering from place to place. Later on, Yugis returns to the city and finds a job of digging underground tunnels for railway freight. But unfortunately, he gets injured and breaks his arm and had to live a life of a beggar. While begging on the streets, Yugis encounters a drunk wealthy young man one day, who offers him meal and even hands him a $100 bill. Yugis realizes that he cannot get change of a $100 bill, as people may think that he has stolen the money. But somehow, he had to make the change for that bill. So he goes to a bar and buys a glass of a beer at 5 cents. But the bartender cheats him and returns him only 95 cents. Yugis gets angry when he finds out that he has been cheated. So in a fit of anger, he attacks the bartender. But suddenly, a policeman rushes there from somewhere, and Yugis is dragged in the jail. The judge sentences 10 days of imprisonment for him. At the jail, he meets a man named Dwayne, who is a criminal. By spending his time with the criminals, Yugis learns that he can survive in a better way by being a criminal. So he enters in the world of crime in Chicago and starts mugging people while living the life of a criminal. Yugis finds that the whole system is corrupt. Later on, he has been introduced to a corrupt politician. The politician gives him special task to join a union to support a Republican Party candidate. So Yugis starts working tirelessly for the Republican candidate. And finally, after the elections, the Republican candidate wins, as planned. In the month of May, the union and meat packers have some disagreements, and so they go on a strike. Yugis gets promoted as the boss. The meat packers start bringing in thugs and scabs from all around the country. During that time, Yugis encounters Ona's boss, who raped her. So in fit of anger, he attacks him. And again, he is thrown in the jail. He calls Harper for the help. But he comes to know that Ona's boss had good relations with the Yugis' current boss. So Harper couldn't help. But he can only lower his bail, so that Yugis could pay the bail for his release. Yugis is then advised to run away from the town. After running away, he again had to live a life of beggar on the streets.
One day, he meets an old friend on the streets, who gives him the address of Ona's cousin, Marija. When Yugis goes to visit Marija, he finds out that she has become a prostitute to provide economical support to the family. Suddenly, the police raids Marija's place, as it was a brothel. And Yugis is also arrested, with the rest of them. Marija tells Yugis that she didn't have any other options but to choose prostitution to feed the family. She also tells him that Ona's stepbrother is dead. Later on, the woman who ran that brothel pays fine for all the prostitutes. And Yugis lies and uses a fake name to get released from there.
When Yugis is released from the jail, he comes across a socialist political meeting and gets inspired by the speech of the speaker. As he could relate everything the speaker said, he tries to find more information about that political party. So he is then introduced to a man named Ostrinsky, who could speak Lithuanian. Ostrinsky gives him the detailed information about socialism, the miserable conditions of the wage earners, the difference between the classes, etc., which Yugis could relate easily. He feels for the first time that he is not alone. Yugis also inspires Ona's stepmother to get involved in socialism. Later on, Yugis finds a job as a porter at a hotel and starts getting more and more involved in the socialism.
At the end of the novel, the Socialist Party achieves great success in the elections. And with this victory, the socialists become hopeful that socialism will be spread all across the country. So the main objective of the writer for writing this novel is to tell the readers to adopt the socialism by elaborating the evils of capitalism. Sinclair thinks that the capitalism is inhuman, and that is the reason why. He depicts the failure of capitalism in this novel and portrays socialism as the cure for all the evils caused by the capitalism.